This world-class asset is right in Denver's backyard, and you're invited to come in. With its changing sites and seasons, the Refuge is a year-round classroom for students of all ages and a year-round sanctuary for more than 330 species of wildlife. No matter when you arrive, be sure to stop by the Visitor Center. You'll be greeted there by U.S. Fish and Wildlife staff and volunteers who'll tell you about the activities
Just a heads up, Andy has something for comments not on the agenda, so we'll raise his hand. Ready?
Well, do you have you heard from Josh if he's coming or not?
We thought he was coming.
Yeah,
If you want to wait a couple minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna wait a couple.
Okay.
I
A couple
started right on
minutes.
time before he walks in, and I feel bad.
Okay, all right.
So
Yeah.
we'll
Whenever
just-
you're ready.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll just
Give him a few minutes.
little extra time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think maybe first we'll bring up the bylaws, and then we'll also say we want to talk about this other thing. First, we can bring up the bylaws. And then second, we can say we want to also talk about this 50 years versus 1955. And then we'll give time them to prepare, too, like how did we get it in two different spots? Yeah, I mean, who knows? It is, and if we've noticed it, but we never known it. You've been on this commission way longer than I have. Like,
I know.
she kind of said the same thing. She's like, it's kind of this and kind of that. So I think it's worth just talking about because it's kind of related to bylaws, these procedural things. So
I know. Good job.
good job.
That was planned.
Yeah, yeah. See, you got the memo. Even Emily is like that.
Yeah. And oh yeah.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. Today is Monday, October 21st, 2024, and this is the Historic Preservation Commission. We'll do a roll call, please.
Chair Haley,
Here.
Vice Chair Berg,
Here.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Here.
Commissioner Keller,
Here.
Commissioner Beauchamp,
Here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Whidden.
Here. All right, and looking at our agenda, is there any additions or changes? Otherwise, we can move to approve.
I would have moved to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any public comments that are not on our agenda this evening? And if you'll just state your name and city of residence for us.
All right. My name's Andy Johnson. I'm with DAJ Design here in Louisville. I wanted to address a topic that's come up the last few meetings, and that it revolves around HSAs, budgets, and how those get used. So this probably should be an agenda item. We could dig into this further because we have quite a bit of data that we could share with you with all the HSAs that we've done over the last number of years. But the reason I wanted to mention this is that we recently reviewed a commercial HSA that was not done by our office, and it sort of fell short of our own standards, and I think it falls short of the HPC's standards. When we changed the amounts that were available for grant funding, one of the criteria, and I'm paraphrasing very much, was the ability to hire consultants to be a part of the report and the review. So we reviewed a commercial report, which in my opinion really should deserve quite a bit more attention, including consultants, and this one had none. And we were really surprised, and I think it brought up the question around, how do HSAs get evaluated kind of in the post form? So when, for example, we produce an HSA, how do we know that it meets the HPC standards? Part of that is staff's review, and that's just a small part, but I do think that these HSAs that we spent quite a bit of time putting together really should come to the HPC in some capacity for review, and you should read them. because they're really interesting and they're really cool. And it's also good just to see what we're uncovering in terms of the buildings that we're studying. And I think it sets you up for better success, particularly if a grant application or a landmark application comes before you at a later date. So just a brief overview, and I'm sorry, I'll probably go over 3 minutes, but hopefully that's okay. In terms of HSAs, from what we generally see, our budget generally is about 75% architecture, 25% structural engineering. That's our consultant that we bring in. We're primarily doing residential reports. However, we have seen sort of an uptick in commercial reports. It generally falls about the same. It's sometimes just a little bit less than 25% on the commercial side for those commercial reports. When we do a residential HSA, and I'll use that because those are more typical. We're generally budgeting about 40 hours per report on the architecture side. When we equate that for what we have allotted, that's about $75 to $85 an hour. That is roughly half our typical billing rate. So we're not doing these for a profit. And I'm not trying to say, hey, look, this is so great. I'm just saying we do them because we're committed to doing them, but we don't do them for a profit. And I would imagine that other companies would probably be in the same boat. When we do a structural report, we actually get a fairly detailed letter from our structural engineer, and we're doing at least 2 trips to the site, usually 3 times. One of them is we measure the building very accurately because that's really important information in terms of how a building may have been added onto or not. We tend to uncover more when we look at a building from a measuring perspective as opposed to just walking around glancing. It's just more detailed. We also write our structural engineering side because we had to figure out a way to control our cost so we could do our job and also hire a consultant. So we actually kind of tee up the structural engineering report so that they can kind of fill in the details. It's still a lot of work on their side, but it's one way that we've learned to some kind of manage the costs and still try to make a $4,000 grant request work. And for $4,000 for residential, $9,000 for commercial, we use every bit of it. And that will always be the case. It would be interesting to dig further into how those grant allocations really do want to happen, because there's probably a more less formulaic kind of way to do this, and there are probably other steps that we could take in terms of how that money is allotted. And part of this is we read a report that's not our own, and we see that it's not kind of meeting what we think the standards are, and we're kind of like, hey, someone's making a little more on this than maybe those who are actually trying to meet the intent. So anyway, again, this probably should be an agenda item where you guys can actually really dig into it further with better data. But I wanted to bring this up so that you could have that discussion maybe when you at the end of your meetings when you're talking about items for next time. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's good information.
Yeah, I agree. We've had some annual goals, and one is to do some improvement in our HSA process, or really the whole landmarking process. But I'd wondered about that a long time myself, that I think typically the city liaison to the HPC has done the review of the completed HSA, and because I don't think we've done that ourselves. So we probably should be looking at, well, maybe we're trusting you all that it's very complete, but it probably should get a subcommittee review or something like that. So thanks.
Yeah, definitely worth discussion. All right, any other public comments not on our agenda tonight? All right, we'll first move to our next item, which is probable cause for 641 Main Street. We'll have a presentation from staff.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commission members. This is Emily Klein-Gibson, Planner 2, presenting the staff report. This is a probable cause application for 641 Main Street. 641 Main Street is a commercial building, currently hosts Moxie Bread Company. It's located on the corner of Main and Pine, with Elm Street to the south, and it parallels Lafarge Avenue to the west. Just a reminder that probable cause is a way to grant approval for the historic structure assessments, or HSAs. HSA grants cover up to $4,000 for residential properties and $9,000 for commercial. They are reimbursements, non-matching, and the landmarking criteria is used to evaluate probable cause for a building. The conditions over time for 641 Main, as you can see here on the left, is probably the oldest photo we have for this property. It's undated, and it shows just a single building residential structure. Then you can see in the 1948 Assessor's Card image, there have been a series of additions that were constructed somewhere between 1893 and 1908. It was during this time when the three distinct parts of the building were constructed. Around 1980, lightning hit the building and caused damage to that middle and south section of the structure. During the remodel, the building was updated, which is why there's such a significantly architectural change between the 1948 Assessor's Card and the present day image. For landmarking criteria, the building was constructed in 1880, making it approximately 144 years old. We do believe there's geographic significance. This building is located on the corner of Main and Pine, which was considered back in the day to be the center of Louisville, and I believe that still can remain true today. The social significance includes Swiss, German, and English immigration history. Some of these property owners used the building primarily as residential, and then there were also 4 consecutive owners who were doctors. They used the building as both a doctor's office and a residential office. One doctor served coal miners, another was known to deliver babies in the city. For the physical integrity, as I mentioned, there have been some exterior changes over time, but the north portion of the building, as well as the overall character and footprint, remain the same. And with that, staff recommends finding probable cause and approving a grant of up to $9,000 towards the cost of a commercial historic structure assessment. And this concludes the staff report. I'm available for any questions. And I believe the applicant is also here.
Great, thank you. Is there any questions for staff?
No.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll have the applicant. Yep, it's anyone who wants to.
Sherry's the owner, Sherry Devine, but I'm the renter, and
then
we're
if you'll
kind of
just-
doing this together.
That's great. If you'll just state your name and city of residence.
Philippa
the
Clark,
record.
Louisville.
Sherry Levine, Boulder.
And it's really up to you, whatever you want to share, or it's just kind of your time. So,
I mean, no, we've been talking about it for a while, and really, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but mostly it's a foundation that I know needs some help down there. We go down and just look in the foundations and think, okay, I know that this needs some work or some support and some help. So we really want to get, the assessment done so we can see, is this safe? What needs doing and things like that. So mostly for the foundations, and then also for the exterior, if there's, if then after the assessment we get the grant, there's a lot of work on the exterior that needs doing as well. And, my knowledge so far of foundations and exterior, correct me if I'm wrong, if the money can be used for other things, but I feel like there's a whole load of wish lists that we have for things. And, we both just totally love that building and, don't want to make any kind of modern changes to it or anything like that. We want to preserve it and, you know, keep its integrity, but we don't want it to fall down, and we need it to be safe for staff and for customers.
That's great. Any questions for the applicants?
A comment maybe, it has a really old date. That building that is next to the City Hall here, which is now Parks and Recreation, is considered the oldest building in Louisville. But because of the mine subsidence here, that building had actually sunk 5 or 6 feet at one point and then had to be repaired. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were some foundations to look at your building.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have fun going in and looking at our foundations. I mean, you've probably seen a lot of old ones, but yeah, it's a trip down there for sure.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess, just real quick, so this is really just a discovery phase. You really don't have any intentions at this point to do any upgrades or repairs? You're trying to get some idea of what the state of the foundation and
Yeah,
otherwise?
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and obviously, of course, we're hoping that we get, you know, if they say that there's some issues, then we'll be able to come back and ask for support from the city to be able to preserve what needs to be preserved there.
Okay.
Did you want to say anything? No.
I just want you to know, originally I bought the building to make a coffee shop. And because of the way my world turned, it didn't happen. And along came Andy. And so Andy and Pippa and the family has all worked so hard. And I love the building, and it's beautiful. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'll keep it forever. It would just be nice if we could take care of it the way it should have been or the way it could be. Would be nice.
That's great. That's a good motivation. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any comments from the public? And seeing none, we'll turn it back for discussion.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's fairly straightforward. I think it meets the criteria, social history, location, architecturally. There's been some changes, obviously, but the original structure is very prominent still. So I would be in favor of approving the HSA.
It seems a lot of what we do, even having a preservation plan, is because people appreciate the old town of Louisville. And if you had a list of the buildings that are most appreciated in Louisville, this one would be high on the list.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'd be in favor of it as well. I mean, 80s lightning, I didn't hear anything about Doc Brown, DeLorean, or the flux capacitor, but I'm game.
All right. Who wants to make a,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the probable cause request for 641 Main Street.
I'll second that.
and if we can get a roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Beauchamp,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Chair Haley,
Yes.
and Commissioner Whidden.
Yes.
Great, thank you for coming. And staff will be in touch with you just as far as next steps, finding someone to do the HSA for you. We have some architects here in town that could probably help also. So, yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, our next item is probable cause for 1040 Lafarge Avenue. We'll have a staff report.
Good evening again, Madam Chair and Commission members. Emily Klein Gibson presenting the staff report. This is a probable cause application for 1040 Lafarge Avenue. 1040 Lafarge is a residential property. It's located on the corner of Lafarge Avenue and Short Street, with Main Street parallel to the east. Conditions over time for the property. The left shows the 1948 assessor's card image, and then the images to the right show present day. As you can see, there have been very few changes to the to the architectural structure of the property, and that's also reflected in the permit records. For landmark criteria, the building was constructed around 1912, making it approximately 112 years old. The architectural significance includes a pyramidal slash hipped roof style and front gabled entry. This architectural style is something that's not documented and underrepresented in the Barclay Place area. The social significance includes Italian immigration history, entrepreneurship, and political involvement. There was one primary family who owned the property for several years, the Romanos. He was Mr. Romano was a business owner. He owned a restaurant in town, and then subsequent generations of Romanos who lived in this property also turned out to serve as mayor for the city, as well as city council members and planning commission members. And the physical integrity of the property, as I mentioned before, the historic footprint has been maintained since 1948 with very minimal changes. And with that, staff recommends finding probable cause and approving a grant of up to $4,000 towards the cost of a residential historic structure assessment. And this concludes the staff presentation. I'm available for any questions. We also have the applicant here who would like to say a few words on the application as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions for staff?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
thanks. If the applicant wants to speak, and just state your name and city of residence.
Andy Johnson, DAJ Design here in Louisville. I'm representing the owner. Unfortunately, they were not able to be here tonight. So anyway, you're kind of used to hearing from me anyway. There's probably not much to really go into with this house. It's wonderful. I have had the chance to tour it kind of top to bottom. It is interesting. I think the history will show that while it looks mostly all original, there was an addition to the back. We're not sure how far into it, but when they did the addition, they made it look exactly like the house. So it'll be a little hard to uncover that part, but it is on a stone foundation, which usually bodes well for the house as opposed to poured concrete foundations, which tend to be really difficult to work with, but stone foundations have their own challenges as well. So we're really excited to dig into this. Hopefully we get the opportunity, and happy to answer any questions specifically about the building since I have been in it.
Great, thank you. Any questions from staff, or any questions for the applicant? Sorry.
No.
All right, thank you so much. Any comments from the public? We'll bring it back for discussion. Seems like a pretty straightforward one as well, maybe even more straightforward.
Very straightforward. Yeah.
So,
Usually you've seen these where you have the front or the side facade that have been really changed. And again, we don't have complete photos from old original
Right.
times, but it does appear that it's pretty much intact, which usually the windows have changed or something along the line. So
yeah.
I'd be in favor.
I think it's nice too to see a property that's a corner lot, so you can see two facades of it. It's encouraging to have to learn more about it and see where it can go.
All right, I'll make a motion.
I'll make the motion to find probable cause for 1040 Lafarge Avenue.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Beauchamp,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Chair Haley,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Whidden,
Yes.
Chair Berg,
Yes.
or Vice Chair
Vice-
Berg. Sorry, Chair Haley.
Oh, it's okay. I'm not offended. All right, thank you so much. And yeah, let the applicant know. And we look forward to working with them and you know the process. So staff will be in touch. Thank you so much. All right, those are all of our probable causes for the evening. We have items from staff. You just stay up there, I guess.
Just some minor updates from staff. There are no certificates or demolition reviews from this past month. There are a few upcoming dates to make note of. First will be the plaque ceremony for 741 Lincoln Avenue. That's going to take place this Wednesday, October 23rd at 6 o'clock. We hope you all can make it. Next, we have a comprehensive plan series of public meetings that will be held on November 7th at the Louisville Rec Center. There'll be 3 in-person workshops at the times listed. If you cannot make the full time for the workshop, we will also have a community open house from 5:30 to 7:30 that evening. And the next regular Historic Preservation Commission meeting will be on November 18th at 6:30. Thank you.
Yes, we're looking very forward to the plaque ceremony. So thanks staff too for making that happen so quickly. So we're looking forward to that. Any of the public that wants to come, it's one of our fun get-togethers. So
This is Gary's home?
yeah, so he wasn't here for the May.
Yeah.
And so were you here last month? Or-
Yeah, not last month, no.
Okay, that's what I thought. So he asked if we could squeeze it in before the end of the year. So it worked out perfectly. So, yeah, so next item is updates from commission members.
So we have, Gary and I have been working in a subcommittee on updating the bylaws, which is required periodically. We have completed our review of the bylaws and sent a revised draft onto the city clerk for administrative review. And we will be bringing to the commission, to the HBC next month, those bylaws for review and voting. The bylaws will be in the staff packet and on the agenda, so they could be looked over in preparation for discussion at the next meeting.
Looking at the bylaws, one of the major additions is there were some new city meeting laws, like doing the things that we are now, taping meetings and the public access to it, that affect all of the commissions. So the city clerk put that code in, or the information about that, the text. Now, the bylaws are really, they work in addition to the municipal code for the city, which is on a website. It's all about building codes and all kinds of things. It also, there are city resolutions that the city council has passed over the years, and those are kind of in a database. So there's additional information there. And in our case, the Historic Preservation Commission is considered a certified local group within the state historical society. So, and they have a bunch of text and rules and things. So there's a lot of different statements that need to be kind of synced up with each other. And we found some things that aren't quite understood between them. So after the city clerk has a chance to look at this version, then there'll probably be some discussions for the commission to agree on, and maybe the city council will need to rule on that as well. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like it's been quite a process going through all that, so thank you for
It hasn't
taking the
been
time.
updated in 10 years, and
Right.
probably the other ones haven't as well.
Yeah, so that's great. Thank you for working on that.
There was one other item that came to our attention that's not in the bylaws per se, that we were hoping to get on the agenda for next month, and that is some sort of inconsistency, perhaps not the perfect word, but between the criteria with dates between the 1955, pre-1955 for different types of permit reviews and the 50 years for demolition. And we were hoping to just have a discussion with the commissioners about those, so there's more clarity around why at times it seems we use 50 years, before 50 years, and other times we use 1955. So with a month, we can look into that a little bit more and then kind of bring it to the commission for discussion.
So did you want to add that into the next month
Yes.
conversation?
Yes, yep, so
Okay.
it's separate from the bylaws, so we
Right.
can have two things for next month.
Okay.
I guess we also ran across a requirement to do an annual report, to report to the state preservation group. And I thought that we were also required to basically give the same information to the city council. So we need to make sure that's happening. And maybe more generally, with the change of having our liaison with the city, we may need to re-look at the projects, the goals we had for this year and see where they stand. Last time I looked, I wasn't sure they'd been updated.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that we do make an annual report to the state. It's part of our certified local government requirements, so we do that each year.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if there's a requirement for a city council report. We have not been doing that, so we would want to make sure we come up to speed
I
on that.
remember in the past, sometimes there would be a joint meeting between the city council and the Preservation Commission, at which time some of those things could be discussed. And I think that went away with the pandemic. Maybe that will happen again.
Yeah, there's always talk about how the city council, and I think it varies from mayor to mayor, and they kind of facilitate often how those interactions take place. So that'll be looked at again for all the city's boards and commissions. I would mention this Wednesday, there's a board and commission open house as well. I forgot to mention that. So if you know anybody who wants to join a city board or commission, there'll be representatives, staff representatives, and others kind of recruiting for that on Wednesday evening. So
Is that here, or I can't remember where the location is? I saw the,
it was here at City Hall. Unfortunately, I think it's Wednesday at 6, the same time as the
at the
plaque
same time.
ceremony.
But we
So I
can
think
tell our
we-
friends.
Yeah, we double booked, but if you know anybody,
yeah, that's a good opportunity for sure.
yeah, it is at it's in council chambers, 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for that reminder. And Gary, were you saying that going to the city council, the report, that's more of a city thing, or is that required? Did you find that was required for somewhere else?
The only thing I saw, Chris
The
can
Nash.
corroborate too, was that it needed to be reported to the state.
Okay,
And we probably should be reviewing it in the commission as well, instead of it just being submitted directly, because I don't recall it being reviewed by the HPC.
yeah, I remember Amelia going through and saying that because for a while we
Okay.
weren't, when we didn't have a full commission, and
Yeah.
that was something we talked about all the time, is that we weren't fulfilling the state's
Yeah, okay, yeah.
requirements. So she definitely, I mean, she didn't have like a written, like where we like read it and review it, but she was definitely telling us if we were in compliance or not. So,
Yeah, it's a pretty technical report.
Right.
Just to make sure that we're staying in compliance with the state's rules for being a certified local government, making sure we're doing all the things we need to do to stay certified with that organization. But we could certainly share it with you.
We definitely should be.
we'll put you in charge of looking at that. Just kidding.
No,
We'll
I
all
think
look
we
at
should
it.
all see it.
No, I'm teasing. We'll all look at it. No, it's good. Good checks and balances. All right, any other things? So the HSA review, I know that has been something that we've talked about off and on. Do we want to pull that forward in the year
I
at
think
all?
we should, yeah.
And that might be it for staff as far as what our November, if we're doing the bylaws and goals, I don't know how many, like tonight we have a pretty light agenda. So if we could do both of them next month, if we don't have, but if we do end up having a lot of probable causes or anything, like we can always table it if we need to wait till December. It's kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, let us look at it.
Okay.
We'll definitely bring it forward. If we can bring it forward next month, we'll bring
Right.
it forward next month, just depending on
How things
number of
land.
applications, staff. We are interviewing, sorry, I had another staff update.
No, that's great.
Yeah, we're interviewing for historic preservation, the liaison planner position. We've got interviews tomorrow and Wednesday. We've got 5 candidates that we're looking at. So
Wow.
hopefully we'll
That's
have
great.
that staff capacity back up soon.
Yeah, that's good news. Yeah. So, yeah, and I guess it'd be good to talk through those things before the end of the year, but definitely in January when we have our new person too.
Now, it was my understanding that that position has been funded out of the preservation fund?
It's partially funded out of the preservation
And
fund.
that's been a half-time person?
Yeah, so they're a full-time staff member, but they're half-time dedicated to historic preservation and then half-time to general planning duties.
Okay. Is there any possibility that we would want to make that a full-time person and, you know, fund more of it out of the preservation fund?
We could certainly look at that. That's definitely a city council
Sure.
level discussion that you could recommend. You know, typically we think, I would say, in the department, when we have someone who's in and trained, we feel like a half-time position is enough to keep your work moving and your work plan moving. But if you feel like you need more staff support, we can certainly look into it further.
Maybe we should talk about that. I've always felt that there were some things that didn't get completed. And maybe it depends on who's assigned to it and how clear we are about what the results we want are.
I think we're also coming back to a normal, again, to like as far as the fire and those kind of things. So I think like we might feel it out for a little bit before but it's definitely something to look at as far as the percentage, maybe not 50, maybe a little bit higher, maybe not full time. But I think once we're fully staffed and staff's not completely overwhelmed with all the non-usual events, we can definitely kind of reevaluate. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I would, we don't limit this person to 50%. If there's a lot of
Yeah.
historic preservation work, we would like
Flex
that. That's their priority. But with things like Marshall Fire, we did have staff spending a lot of time reviewing rebuild permits. That probably ate into the capacity a little bit, but
And just not
Yeah.
having a full staff, so.
and we've had a lot of staff turnover starting with COVID, and
Right.
it's just kind of continuing to churn a bit. So we're hoping to get some stability.
Right. So I think we can kind of settle in a little bit and then reevaluate everything
Yeah.
as things get
If at our
more
next meeting,
stable.
we're looking at the planning, the items the goals we'd had and completing those, and if it's a pretty long list, maybe that's more reason to expand that work. Thanks.
All right. Any other commission updates?
I'd like to thank Andy Johnson for just kind of giving us a brief overview of how he sees HSA budgeting and how that fits in. I know I'm still interested in seeing some sort of a log or a report that shows kind of what was spent on the different ones, which I know we talked about last time. I think that just further expands upon it a little bit.
And I think more than that is the consistency of what are we getting for what we're paying for, basically. So I think those two pieces together are really important.
Yeah, I would lean on staff. Usually would probably run herd on checking through that sort of stuff and not always being in front of everybody, but having an occasional one that does show up where you have a reference point, I think wouldn't be a bad item. I don't know what the frequency would be. I would hesitate to make it too often, but it can't be never either, in my opinion.
Yep.
I'd like to, before we adjourn, also recognize that we have some students in attendance this evening. Once a semester, the local high school social studies teacher there for civics asks high school students to go to different boards and commissions for the city, and we always enjoy having you here and hope that you have seen a little bit of what this commission does for the city, and encouraged to see what else is going on with city governance. So thank you for attending.
All right, anything else? All right, our last item is to adjourn.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you so much. Have a good night.